Hey there. Welcome to the Adoption Roadmap podcast, where we talk about navigating the adoption process and beyond. Before we get into the episode, here's a quick word from today's sponsor. The choice to place a child for adoption is one of the most profound and difficult decisions a woman can make. Many birth mothers describe feeling supported during the process, but unseen afterward. Solace gift boxes were created to change that. Each box honors birth mothers in their ongoing motherhood with beautifully curated artisan-made items from small businesses. Choose from 3 themes: Peace, Love, and Pamper, the Paper Crane, and the Light Box. Available in 3 sizes, all $59.99 or less, with shipping included. Don't know a birth mom personally? You can sponsor a box and Solace will send it to a birth mother nominated through their community. Solace is a project by Absolute Love Adoption, a licensed 501c3. Learn more or send a box at adoptsolace.com. Link in the show notes to learn more.
Adoption today doesn't look like adoption 5 years ago. Not in pace, not in volume, cost, or expectations. The landscape is shifting quietly, and unless you're inside the work every day, most of these changes go unnoticed until you feel them personally. So in this episode, as we near the end of 2025, I'm going to walk you through what's happening right now, what agencies are seeing, what hopeful parents are experiencing, what expectant moms are asking for, and how culture, tech, and economics are influencing all of it. This isn't about fear or urgency. It's just about awareness. Think of this as a snapshot of domestic infant adoption in 2025. All right, let's get into it. Fewer infant adoptions overall. That is a statistic from the National Council for Adoption, and we are feeling it. Over the last few years, there's been I don't even want to say slow decline. It was a sudden decline after I'd say about year 2 of COVID is when kind of the rug got pulled out of everything, out from under all of us in the adoption world. Now, is that a bad thing? Maybe not. There's also a decline in families pursuing adoption. So another statistic is that there is higher fertility coverage in a lot of areas, and more people are pursuing fertility treatments longer. So if they start the adoption process at all, it's usually later. I have seen agencies close, consultants close down, and attorneys who have added surrogacy as a big part of their practice where it used to be primarily adoption. So we are definitely seeing that decline in adoption. Okay. And evidently there's more employer-sponsored surrogacy benefits as well, which I didn't know about, but I found that in my research. The costs of adoption. Costs of adoptions right now are all over the place. It's like a free-for-all when it comes to finances and adoption. The cost of adoptions I have seen in my practice, and by the way, I have been working in adoption as a consultant for over 12 years. So that means I really have the pulse of what's going on in domestic infant adoption across the United States, not just in one area. And so I say that because a lot of agencies will tell you what they are seeing in adoption, and that's just one little area of the world, maybe, unless they are really talking to a lot of other agencies in other places. And let me tell you, that doesn't happen as often as it should. So I have seen costs in adoption range from $35,000 to $80,000 plus. Legit. And a lot of people ask, well, why? What's the difference in cost? And why are some lower and why are some higher? If only there was an easy way to answer that. It is driven by a lot of layers. Number one is, well, it should be driven by how late in the pregnancy a woman comes and makes an adoption plan. Is it a really quick adoption where there's not a lot of expenses involved for her? Or is it a much longer adoption where obviously you're supporting the expectant mom for much longer? Maybe she has needs living expenses, all of that. On top of that, there's attorney fees. There is marketing fees. That has gone way up over the years. You are now, as a hopeful adoptive parent, paying a pretty big expense for the agencies to market to expectant moms. And then the other piece of it is the actual agency fee and the fee that's going to the caseworkers who are working with both you and the adoptive parent. So we've seen costs really, really range. Now, the good thing is, at least with RG Adoption Consulting, the good thing is we are seeing a range. So I can't tell you that your adoption for sure is going to be between 60 and 80,000, and that's what we're seeing across the board. That's not the case. We truly are seeing a very wide range. A lot of that too has to do with how open you are and whether you're going to see some of those lower cost adoptions, the agencies that have much lower fees. Agencies can kind of run their business however they want to. Now, I will say people who work in adoption tend to work around the clock. So they're, kind of make their fees what they see is, commensurate to what they work. I don't know. But they range, and that's what I'm trying to say here. Inflation also increases medical and social work costs. So everything, and we are all feeling it, the cost of everything has been trending upwards, which makes the rise in adoption costs. I remember when I started 12 something years ago, and somebody told me that an adoption was $45,000 or $50,000. And I was like, that is crazy. That is so high, especially 50. I used to not share situations that were 50,000 for the longest time because I thought that was astronomical. And now I'm happy if it's 50. Very interesting to see what's happening in the world of adoption. Also, for many, many years, I saw larger families adopting babies. Families that already had 3 or 4 kids adopting. I'm seeing that a lot less frequency. And my guess is that has to do with the bandwidth. How much more can a family afford? Also, I think a piece of that is birth parent preferences as well, which we'll get into in a second. So larger families are not adopting as much, I guess, which is good for the people who have no children and are trying to become parents for the first time. Age matters. It always has. Many, many agencies are capping at 50. They either want to see one person, if you are a couple under 50, some agencies will say your 2 ages can't add up to 100. Some agencies will be happy to take your money and try to match you. The chances are a lot lower if you're both in your 50s. For infant placements. Now, if you are open to adopting older children who are 4 and up, then your chances are much greater for sure. And again, that also has to do with what you're open to, what your preferences are. Now, there is always an exception to that. Black adoptive families are urgently needed. Really is a nationally, across the board, in private infant adoption, Black and biracial families are desperately needed. If you are a Black hopeful adoptive family in your 50s and you still really want to adopt an infant, I would say all day long, I'll accept you into my program, and I think you'll probably match. Agencies consistently are reaching out to us asking if we have Black families that are open and home study ready to adopt a Black baby. Moms really want to see more and more parents who mirror their child, and rightfully so. Same-sex and single parents, we're seeing slower match timelines. It's getting harder and harder. Whereas a few years ago, we had absolutely no problem. I am seeing more and more that they are waiting longer. Now, that said, overall, timelines are a lot slower. For many, many, many years, we used to say, you will most likely match within 3 to 9 months of working with us. And now it's starting to trend more to 1 to 2 years. I don't know if that, our hope is still under a year, within a year of signing up with your agencies. And for the most part, the majority of our families do. But I will say we have seen many more families trending to those slower timelines. So we'll have to just wait and see what happens with that. I would say, again, I can't stress enough, the more you are open, the better. So do your research on what that means. I'm not going to get into that right now. Older child private placements, that is definitely increasing. I have seen a huge increase in placements of children beyond toddler age privately. Perhaps the child was in foster care and the mom or family member was able to step forward and make a private adoption plan. I just have to tell you what's going on here. Would you like to come into the camera view? Come on. Can you make it through the door? Okay. Well, then this is the day before Halloween where I am recording, and my son just walked into the room in a full shark costume and stood in my doorway. All right. Thank you. I will continue. Children being adopted is definitely a trend. I have seen a huge increase in placements of children older than toddler age being adopted privately. Now, that could either mean in some states, if a child is in foster care, a mom might be able to step in and say, okay, I'm never getting my child back. I'd like to make a private placement for them. That has happened. Or maybe a child has been with an older family member who no longer can care for the child. Whatever the reason is, and there are a million reasons, I have seen a really big increase in placements of older children. So if that is something you are open to, that is definitely a great possibility. As I was researching some of the trends as well as writing down the things that I have seen, another thing that came up is family preservation focus. There's been a stronger emphasis in helping parents parent. And this is where at the beginning I was saying, maybe the shrinking numbers isn't a bad thing. If there are more agencies and organizations out there that are stepping in to provide supportive services to prevent moms from having to place, that is always a good thing. And the Child Welfare Information Gateway reports prioritizing kinship placement and reunification. That is always the case with foster care. But again, if there are more services out there helping moms try to keep their babies, that's only a good thing. And that could be one of the reasons why the trend is going downwards. All right. So expectant parent trends. I mentioned it earlier before. Expectant parents are way more selective when choosing adoptive parents. What does that mean? Well, I mentioned it before. Many Black moms want a Black family member. A lot of people are, sometimes they want a same-sex family, a single mom. Sometimes it's as specific as, I want them to have this kind of dog, or I don't want them to have a dog, or I want them to have children, or I don't want them to have children. Kind of like all of us, we dream about the type of family we want, and so do expectant moms. They dream about the type of family they want for their child, and they are verbalizing that. They are sharing that more and more. And because of that, it's becoming harder and harder for agencies to find the right families to match with the moms who are asking for very specific criteria, which means more and more agencies are relying on consultants and sometimes other agencies that they have relationships with to help them find the right family to match with the mom that they are working with. That I am definitely seeing a huge increase in the number of agencies that have to rely on consultants to help them match, and expectant moms being more selective. And guess what? At the same time, hopeful adoptive parents are also being more selective than I have seen in a long time. It used to be that I sent out a situation and would have so many hopeful parents respond within minutes, and now we chase them. So I don't know what that's about. I think part of that is I think families who are working with consultants are starting to see more situations on a more regular basis because what I just mentioned, that it's harder for agencies to do matching unless they have a ton of different kinds of families. So if families are getting used to getting situations constantly, they think they can wait for the pie in the sky unicorn situation. And I'm here to tell you that it's really frustrating. It's really frustrating. And I'm not saying that if you have certain criteria to push outside of that. That's not what I'm saying. But even when situations are matching within the criteria of what families are saying they're open to when they come in, if one little hair is out of place, they're like, oh, well, we'll get another one. And then a lot of times we don't hear from them, which is also frustrating, by the way. So I would say that is not a great strategy. You don't know when that next opportunity is going to come your way. And I'm here to tell you, there is no perfect situation. You can find something scary to you that you're fearful about with everything. This is not ideal for anyone. And so get the support you need to keep your expectations level. I guess that's the best way to say it. So being more selective. Also, openness, a big trend. More moms are wanting visits, and that's become almost the norm. I'd say it's still probably ongoing communication, and there are more and more portals online to have that kind of communication. And sometimes that's enough for a mom. Other times it's direct communication. But I would say, I don't know, a good 60%, I think the majority are asking now for yearly visits. So that is also something. Do the work internally for you if that is something that feels scary to you. Ask yourself why. Are you just fearing the unknown? Because until you look at somebody eye to eye, until you talk to them, until you get the information about them, you're fearing nothing, just whatever stories you're telling yourself in your head. Usually it is a beautiful thing, and I would highly recommend being open to visits. Wraparound support is increasing, which is also a great thing. There are more and more post-adoption placement support groups and organizations for moms. I'm seeing more support groups, including our community for post-adoption for adoptive parents. There's a couple of those out there now. These things did not exist before. So that and there's a ton of adoptee-centered therapists and adoption competent therapists that are I am finding much easier than I ever could before. So that's wonderful. Shorter versus longer match times. So here's what I mean by that. Lately, way more of our families have been matching with moms who are due in 2 months or less, either baby born, which I've seen a big increase in over the years, or I'd say 2 months or less. It used to be where we were getting calls every day for moms who were due 4 to 6 months out on average. And I would say now it's 3 months or less on average. That's not to say we don't get some of those longer matches. There are no statistics that we are seeing that there is a higher risk in a longer match versus a shorter match. Longer matches can be beautiful, but extremely hard if they don't go through. Than shorter matches where you can rebound a little quicker and move forward quicker if things don't work out. But I think maybe expectant moms are waiting longer before deciding to make an adoption plan, or possibly agencies are supporting moms longer and being really ethical and intentional about making sure that this is the right, thing for her, that this is the right option for her before they make a match. So they are counseling moms more and hopefully at the same time taking some of the risk away from the families. So hopefully that's the reason why. And I think it is. I think it's a mix of all of those things. Let's see. I talked about hopeful parents being more selective, longer wait times. Oh, there's also been an increase in fall throughs over the years. I have seen more and more fall throughs. I don't really have a ton of statistics. It's not by a lot, but it's definitely something I have noticed. And some of those fall throughs are even with baby borns where you think there is no risk at all. And a mom chooses a family to come out right after the baby is born. And then by the time the family comes, changes her mind. There are lots of different stories. Don't take that one and say, oh, that's going to happen. It usually doesn't, but I've seen a lot of crazy things. Families who engage in education and therapy fare better. Emotional resilience and education matters in adoption. I am telling you, the people who really engage and get the support of a supportive community of people who have been through it, who are going through it, those who dig into the podcasts and read and really listen to all the voices tend to have a much better time in the pre-adoption phase and also the post-adoption phase. I'll come to that later. So that is definitely something we have seen over and over and over again. I talked about visits becoming the norm, and I will say here that openness is prevalent. I would say that there really isn't such a thing as closed adoption anymore. We are past that. Open adoption is really the only thing that exists anymore. Even when a mom says she doesn't want an open adoption, most of the time, either it will open up later, or when your child gets old enough and really wants information, you or them will find them probably pretty easily. So just come in expecting open adoption, and the more open you can be, the better. And if you are really resisting that, look at why and get the support you need to address it before you start. Technology is definitely a trend. It is popping up everywhere. Technology and adoption are really overlapping now. More and more platforms are coming out for pre-adoption, for post-adoption, for profiles, for photo sharing. There is a lot of technology stuff, and video is a huge trend. More and more families are now creating videos, and more agencies are requiring videos now instead of just a profile, because it's a more personal touch, and the match feels like a better match when you are being compared to somebody else, or when you're one of the top 2 people profiles that a mom is looking at. She is almost always going to go with the one who has the video, where she can hear them and see their movements and see who they are. Post-adoption, and I have here Identity Truth Matters. I recently interviewed Dr. Tony Hines, and I will put his episode down below. In fact, I think it was the last 2 episodes. He is an adoptee. He's a researcher. He recently wrote his thesis for his doctorate, and one of the things he shared was that a high percentage of adoptees, and this is our worst nightmare, parents, so listen up, a high percentage of adoptees distance themselves from their adoptive parents as adults when their parents have avoided hard conversations around identity. It could be around race. It could be around their story and not telling them their story. It could be around talking about their birth family and avoiding that. It could be that you just never bring it up because you think that they will if they need to. No, sir. If you want a good relationship with your child, you have to be honest. You have to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And you have to have hard conversations. Don't avoid it. And silence is just as bad. So if you are not, if you're going in thinking, oh, I want a more closed adoption, or, you want to distance yourself from the birth family, or, you don't see race, or then adoption isn't right for you. And I really want you to take that in. I know that's really harsh to say, but we all want to be the best parents we can be. And when you adopt, that comes with extra layers. So remember that. All right. I want to mention another thing. There is still a confusion between consultants and facilitators. If you are an agency listening, please hear me when I say this. Some agencies are still telling their clients they cannot work with a consultant, and that is bullshit. It's not true. Anybody anywhere can work with a consultant. They cannot work with a facilitator. Some states you can, many states you cannot. So what is the difference? A consultant does not, at least they shouldn't be. And if you are a consultant and you're doing this, you're a facilitator. You're using our name in vain. A consultant does not talk to birth parents as it pertains to making a match or on behalf of their client, or doesn't meet with birth parents, doesn't match expectant parents with hopeful parents. We have nothing to do with facilitating a match. Period. The end. If an agency reaches out to us and asks us if we have a family, the most we'll do, send out the situation to our families, say who's interested. If they say yes, we can send their profile over to the agency. Unless you're in New York, and in New York, I will not touch your profile. If you want to present, you have to do that directly with the agency. We are a guide and education arm. Facilitators take payment for making matches. They work with birth moms. Now, from my understanding, and I am not an expert in this, they are not allowed to counsel birth families, expectant parents. So please know that if you are working with a facilitator, and you should ask if you're unclear. Agencies are licensed and they can share their license number with you. Facilitators are not, typically, because they don't have to be, but facilitators are working with birth moms. They're getting paid to make matches. Consultants do not get paid to make a match. In fact, consultants should not even collect money based on a match. Okay? That is the difference. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Gone are the days of the Shutterfly profile books. In are the days of the profile designers. If you are still thinking that you can make your own Shutterfly book or whatever, and a mom is looking at your profile against somebody who had it professionally designed, most likely they're going to go with the other one because it's going to show better. People who do their own typically are not looking at the quality of the pictures and the way it's laid out, and they don't know, you don't always know exactly what needs to go into a profile book. So do not skimp on trying to save $1,000 or a couple $100 for the profile book, the one tool that is used to get you matched, that is used for an expectant parent to choose who she wants to parent her child. Don't skimp on that. That doesn't make any sense. Video matters, tone, energy, trust, communication. If you have an opportunity to do a video, do it. Authenticity beats polish. Be authentic. Don't feel like you have to hide your tattoos if you are covered in tattoos. Nope. Some mom wants to see that. So being authentic, more video, don't do it yourself, invest in having it done right. Definitely a trend. Social media. More families are using social media as either the sole outreach tool or part of their outreach to try to connect with an expectant mom. There are tools for that now. Our Chosen Child, I know, has a plan and post tool for families wanting to post on social media for adoption. I think it's the only one. Shameless plug. So that's kind of cool. So there's more resources to help you do pretty much anything in adoption. Whatever you need help with, it's out there. The adoptee voice is louder and shaping language, and I am here for it. When I started, there was no talk on social media from different voices. It was all the adoptive parent voice. And now we are hearing more and more from birth moms and from adoptees, and we are all better for it. They are influencing the vocabulary that we use, the language that we use. And you guys, there's no reason to be at a lack of being informed and educated. It is out there. There are more books. There are more podcasts. There are more social media platforms. It is out there, and it only can help us raise the ethics of adoption and be more ethical in adoption, because more people are keeping the adoption industry and professionals in the industry accountable. That is definitely a trend, and it's a great one. Thankfully, transparency is becoming more of a standard, as it should. Let's see here. I think that's about it. Those are some of the trends. Adoption is a little slower. It's more relational. It's more thoughtful than the version that maybe a lot of people are still picturing. The volume is smaller. The expectations are clearer. The conversations are much deeper, especially around openness, identity, and contact. The families who navigate this landscape well aren't necessarily the ones just chasing speed. They're the ones who stay curious, who stay teachable, and who build relationships instead of looking at adoption as a transaction. If you are beginning this process or supporting someone who is, pay attention to these shifts. These are really shaping the adoptive experience that you are going through and that your child grows up inside. Adoption is no longer just about placement. It actually never was. It's about connection. It's about honesty and openness. And it's about raising adoptees in the healthiest way that we can and being the best parents that we can. And when all those pieces are honored, and we are honoring everybody in the adoption constellation, the relationships built on the other side tend to last. I hope this was helpful to you. Who knows, maybe I'll do it again next year and we'll see how the trends have changed. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye-bye. All right, friends, that's a wrap for today's episode. What was your biggest takeaway today? If you found this conversation valuable, inspiring, or even just entertaining, I'd love for you to leave a 5-star rating and review. That's how more people find the show and how we spread education and support across the adoption community. Hit follow, leave a 5-star rating, and share this with someone who could use it. We drop a new episode every Wednesday morning. Catch you next time on the Adoption Roadmap Podcast. Thanks for being here. Bye-bye.